It began as most awakenings do with a collapse. The kind of moment where everything you thought was solid, your health, your future, your sense of direction, suddenly gives way. I still remember the sterile light in the doctor's office, the too casual tone in his voice when he delivered the news that made my insides clench. It wasn't terminal, but it was enough. Enough to make me rethink everything I'd been taking for granted. And almost simultaneously, like some cosmic prank, I lost my job. Just like that income gone, confidence shattered. I was 30 something, sitting alone on my bed with a bank account balance of $19. The ATM pa wouldn't even let me take it out. It's strange how the world continues as if nothing happened. Birds still chirped. The sun still rose. People kept posting vacation photos and smiling through filters while I sat in a room that felt like it was closing in. There's a particular kind of silence that creeps into your bones when despair is all you hear. But here's the thing, that silence became my teacher. I stumbled across a video on Stoicism that week, not some highbrow philosophy class, just a simple breakdown of what Marcus Aurelius once wrote: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." I wrote that down. Not just mentally, I physically scrolled it onto a crumpled envelope on my nightstand. I needed to believe it. I needed to test it. What I realized is this rock bottom strips away illusions. You don't get the luxury of distractions when your future looks like a blank wall. And oddly, that's where the clarity came from. For the first time, I wasn't worried about what people thought or what my 5-year plan was supposed to be. I wasn't trying to curate my image. I was trying to survive with dignity. And survival didn't mean being frantic. It meant being still. I started with small steps. Morning walks. No music, no podcasts, just silence. Listening to my breath, watching how my thoughts spiraled. I noticed how quickly my mind wanted to jump ahead. What will happen next month? How long can I stretch these groceries? Will anyone ever hire me again? But every time I brought myself back to now, there was this soft awareness. Right now, I'm okay. Right now, I'm breathing. Right now, the world is still turning. It was like stepping out of a burning building and realizing the fire was mostly in my head. Stoicism didn't promise a way out of suffering. It offered something better, a way to reframe suffering, so it becomes your fuel. Epictetus once said, "Difficulties are things that show a person what they are." I repeated that every time doubt crept in. I began to look at each problem as a sculptor looks at raw stone, something to carve myself against. Slowly, I began to see patterns. I had been operating under the assumption that life owed me a certain trajectory, that I was entitled to success because I worked hard, that health was a default setting, and that things going wrong were somehow unfair. Stoicism ripped that script to shreds. The world doesn't owe us clarity, it gives us raw material. It's up to us to interpret it wisely. And wisdom, I found, often hides inside quiet acceptance, not defeat. Acceptance, there's a difference. I accepted the health diagnosis, not passively, but as something to work with. I accepted the job loss as a signal, not a failure. And slowly this space opened up in my mind, free of expectation, free of resentment. Just open and still. That was the first time in years I felt real peace. Peace not because life was smooth, it wasn't, but because I was starting to anchor myself not to outcomes but to principles, to reason, to courage, to daily practice. Even when the money was gone, even when my future was uncertain, I had something inside that couldn't be taken away. That's when I realized the only true security is internal. Everything else is temporary. From the outside, I was broke, unemployed, a man with a medical file thicker than his wallet, But inside, I was rebuilding. And strangely, I wasn't afraid anymore. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." I underlined it, dog-eared the page. That phrase became my compass. Every crisis I faced was not an obstacle, but an invitation to dig deeper, to refine, to strip away what was unnecessary and meet myself honestly. There's a kind of liberation that comes when you realize your identity isn't tied to your resume, your health record, or your bank account. That beneath the layers of fear and expectation, you are something sturdy, something capable of carrying the weight. In losing everything, I gained clarity, and that clarity, it became the foundation for everything that came next. It's easy to carry the weight of the world when you don't even realize it's on your shoulders. Before everything fell apart, before the diagnosis, the job loss, the late night panic spirals, I didn't think of myself as someone obsessed with expectations. I thought I was just motivated, just goal oriented. I had plans, a timeline, metrics for success. But the truth is, those plans were shackles. Stoicism didn't just teach me how to endure what happens, it taught me to re examine what I expect to happen in the first place. That shift, it changed everything. I used to wake up with a checklist in my head: where I should be in life, how much I should be earning, when I should have a house, a promotion, a certain kind of lifestyle. I mapped my future out like a spreadsheet and got frustrated when reality didn't match the formula. Even small detours felt like failures. Delays weren't just annoying, they were personal insults to the version of the future I had been clinging to. But Stoicism asked me a question that pierced through that noise. Who told you it had to be that way? That voice came to me one night when I was lying awake, wondering if I'd ever get back to where I used to be. I'd been applying to jobs with no response. I'd gone through my savings. Every day felt like I was falling further behind some invisible curve. And then I asked myself, behind what? Behind whom? Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." That line sat with me, like a stone in my gut, because I didn't just crave more, I expected more. I thought I was owed progress because I was trying so hard. But Stoicism doesn't care how hard you try, it cares about how you show up to what is. That's when the second layer of this lesson sank in. Expectation isn't just stressful, it's a form of delusion. It puts you at odds with reality. You start thinking life is broken because it didn't follow your imagined script. And that delusion, those quiet, sneaky expectations, they don't just make us anxious, they rob us of the present, they blind us to what we already have. I remember one morning I was eating a plain breakfast, just eggs and toast, and instead of appreciating it, my mind wandered to how much better it would be to have something fancier. French toast, bacon, a cappuccino, something more impressive, more Instagram worthy. That's when I caught myself. I was layering dissatisfaction over something perfectly fine. The eggs were warm, the toast was golden, I had food, I had peace. But expectation whispered, you should have more. So I decided that day, no more shoulds, no more life lived in comparison. I started asking myself daily, what do I already have that I failed to notice? And the answers were humbling. I had a roof over my head, air in my lungs, a mind capable of choosing how to respond. That's wealth. You can spend your entire life sprinting toward a future that never arrives. You can sacrifice every moment in front of you for a dream of something better. But you'll never feel fulfilled, not really, until you stop demanding that life be different and start being curious about how good it already is. The Stoics weren't anti-goal. They weren't suggesting we become passive or lazy. But they knew that attaching your happiness to external outcomes was a dangerous game. You might win for a while, but the scoreboard always resets. You'll always need more, always be chasing. What I've found is that letting go of expectations doesn't mean lowering your standards, it means shifting your definition of success. I stopped asking myself if I was where I wanted to be. I started asking if I was who I wanted to be. Was I showing up with integrity? Was I patient? Was I kind? Was I present? Those questions gave me power because I could answer them with action right now. No job offer needed. No perfect health required. One day, my wife found me sitting on the couch, smiling at nothing. She asked what I was thinking about, and I said, nothing, really. Just grateful. And I meant it. There was no grand reason, no windfall, no breakthrough. I just wasn't waiting for the future to make me feel okay anymore. Marcus Aurelius in Meditations wrote, "Don't hanker after what you don't have. Instead, fix your attentions on the finest and best that you have and imagine how much you would long for these if they weren't in your possession." That mental exercise changed how I saw everything. When I hug my wife now, I try to imagine that I might never get another chance. Not in a morbid way, but in a reverent one. And it makes every embrace deeper, every word more intentional, every goodbye more meaningful. This is what happens when you drop the weight of expectation. You stand taller. You walk lighter. You finally see what's around you. And what's around me now every day is a life that feels real. Not perfect, not flashy, but honest, calm, enough. The script I used to carry in my head, what I should earn, how fast I should succeed, who I should impress, it's gone. In its place, there's just this quiet mantra I say to myself every morning. Let me meet today as it is not as I wish it to be. Let me do what I can with what I have. And let that be enough. It is. There's a kind of strength that isn't loud. It doesn't roar or punch through obstacles. It simply opens its hands and says, yes. That's what Amor Fati means to me. Not just acceptance of life's twists, but a full-hearted embrace of them. Loving fate, not in the passive sense of surrender, but in the active sense of cooperation. Of seeing every moment, every setback, every detour as something I would have chosen had I truly understood the bigger picture. When I first came across the phrase, I didn't understand it. Love your fate. How could I possibly love getting laid off? Or love receiving medical news that made my stomach churn? How could anyone love uncertainty, setbacks, or exhaustion? But the more I sat with it, the more it made sense, not intellectually at first, but practically. I began to trace the events of my life that had caused pain, and I asked myself what came from them. Not just what I lost, but what I gained. And that's where the shift happened. The job loss, it pushed me to build my own business. The illness, it forced me to slow down, to care for my body, to reconsider what I valued. The months of quiet, the weeks of doubt, the days when I didn't want to get out of bed, they stripped away everything that was unimportant. They gave me clarity. And now, when I look back, I don't feel bitterness, I feel gratitude. Because those moments didn't ruin me. They revealed me. Nietzsche wrote Amor Fati, "Let that be my love. Henceforth, I do not want to wage war against what is ugly. I do not want to accuse. I do not even want to accuse those who accuse. Looking away shall be my only negation." This is radical peace. A peace that doesn't depend on circumstances being easy. A peace that doesn't need an apology from life. It just moves forward, eyes open, heart full. There's a memory I carry with me, standing in a long line at the airport just back from a draining trip overseas. I was exhausted. My phone battery was low. My body ached. And when I finally made it outside, I had to wait 2 hours for my ride home. In the past, I would have stewed. I would have fumed, called, complained, checked the time every 3 minutes. But that day I didn't. I put in my earbuds. I stood under the sky and I just was. Music in my ears, breeze on my skin. No resentment, no anxious tapping, just patience. And I thought to myself, this is Amor Fati in action. This is what it means to love the moment you're in, even when it's imperfect. Stoicism didn't make me indifferent, it made me capable. It trained me to see that life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us if we are willing to learn. Every interruption is a teacher, every frustration is a mirror, every delay is a test. Not of the world's efficiency, but of my character. Because the real lesson isn't things will go wrong. That's obvious. The real lesson is what will I do when they do? I've come to believe that our response is our power. It's where we reclaim our agency. I can't change the weather. I can't change the past. I can't force people to behave a certain way or make life bend to my will. But I can love what is. Even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." I stopped seeing difficulties as barriers. Now I see them as blueprints. They're telling me something. They're shaping me. Every challenge is a forge, and I get to decide whether I walk out stronger or stay melted in the mold. People often ask me now how I stay so calm, how I keep smiling through stress. I tell them it's not because life is easy, it's because I stopped waiting for it to be. I've made a home inside the storm. I don't just tolerate the wind, I dance with it. That doesn't mean I enjoy pain. I'm not some masochist who cheers for misfortune, but I trust it. I trust that there's a lesson, a rebalancing, a perspective being offered. And I don't want to miss it by complaining. When unexpected bills hit during my trip, I didn't panic. I used to spiral, seeing my savings tick down would trigger a wave of fear. But this time I just whispered to myself, it's only money, because it is. Money comes, money goes. I remember when I had none, literally nothing I could withdraw. Now even when things get tight, I know I'll be okay. And even if I won't be, I'll meet it with grace. That's the deal I made with fate. I won't demand guarantees. I won't beg for fairness. I'll just keep walking eyes open, saying yes. Every scar has a story. Every bruise has wisdom. And every detour has brought me closer to this calm, this centeredness I didn't even know was possible. Amor Fati isn't an abstract motto. It's a way of life. A quiet smile in a traffic jam. A deep breath when plans fall apart. A whispered thank you when you're tested yet again. This is how I live now. With my hands open. With my heart steady. With love for every twist in the road, even the ones that hurt. Because they brought me here. And here is good. There was a time when anxiety felt like my default setting. I would wake up with a tight chest, that quiet dread just under the surface. The kind that made even simple things, checking my bank balance, opening emails, waiting for someone to text back, feel like acts of survival. I was always preparing for something to go wrong, always running numbers in my head, always bracing for the next hit. Back then I thought anxiety was just part of life. Something to manage, something I had to cope with. But Stoicism taught me something radical. Anxiety doesn't come from events, it comes from judgment, from my mind. Epictetus said it clearly. It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. That line hit me like lightning, because I realized the things I feared, bills, delays, other people's opinions, uncertainty, weren't dangerous in themselves. It was the story I attached to them that created the fear, the catastrophizing, the what ifs, the spiral of imagined futures that hadn't happened, and most of the time never would. I didn't need to fix anxiety, I needed to examine it. So I began watching my thoughts, not trying to stop them, just observing. Whenever that anxious swirl began, I'd pause and ask, what exactly am I afraid of? I'd then name it, shine light on it. And most of the time, it was a phantom fog, not substance. For example, during my overseas trip, I had some unexpected expenses. A couple $100 here, an extra booking there. Years ago, that would have triggered a storm in my mind. What if this keeps happening? What if I run out? What if I can't cover rent next month? What if everything unravels? But now, I looked at the number, I took a breath, and I said out loud, it's only money, not dismissively, but with full understanding. Because I remembered the time I had $19 in the bank. I remembered not being able to withdraw it because the minimum ATM limit was $20. I remember that helpless, defeated feeling. And now I have more than enough. Enough to cover those expenses. Enough to live. Enough to be okay. And even if I didn't, panicking wouldn't help. That's what Stoicism gave me, the ability to separate events from emotion. The ability to say, here is the situation. And here is how I choose to respond. Not react, respond. The difference is everything. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's not just a quote. It's a practice, a daily act of reclaiming your attention. Now, when something goes wrong, I don't spiral. I step back, I examine it. Is this urgent? Is this within my control? If not, I let it go. And if it is, then I do what I can calmly. Because panic never helped me solve a single problem. And calm helps you think. Anxiety thrives in the gap between where we are and where we think we should be. It feeds on imagined futures. But when you pull your attention back to the present fully without resistance, it shrinks. It loses its oxygen. So I started living like this, one moment at a time. If I had food, I ate it slowly. If I had a conversation, I listened without thinking of my next task. If I went on a walk, I paid attention to the trees, the cracks in the pavement, the feeling of wind against my arms. Presence became my medicine. That doesn't mean I became careless. I still plan. I still budget. I still prepare. But I don't worry anymore. Because worry, as the Stoics taught me, is a misuse of imagination. It's rehearsing suffering that hasn't arrived. The Buddhists say pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. The Stoics say the same thing in different words. One day my wife was running late to pick me up after a long journey. I'd been traveling for hours. My legs ached. My eyes were heavy. She was 2 hours late. And yet I wasn't irritated. I wasn't tapping my foot or checking my watch every 30 seconds. I just stood there. I put in my earbuds, played music I loved, watched people coming and going, felt the breeze, smiled. Because what was the point of getting upset? Anger wouldn't make the car arrive faster. Frustration wouldn't restore my energy. All I could do was meet the moment with acceptance and a kind of quiet joy. And that moment, ordinary as it was, showed me how far I'd come. Not just in how I behaved, but in how I felt. No tension, no storm, just stillness. Anxiety, I've learned, is a liar. It tells you that you're in danger when you're not. It convinces you that peace is impossible, that the future must be feared. But Stoicism speaks a deeper truth, that your mind is the seat of your freedom. That even when life is uncertain, your response can be solid, grounded, wise. Now, when something unsettling happens, I don't say, why is this happening to me? I say, this is happening. How can I meet it well? That's a better question. That's a stronger life. And slowly, anxiety has stopped knocking. It knows I won't open the door. There's a strange kind of freedom that comes when you stop needing life to be comfortable. We spend so much time avoiding discomfort. We rush through lines, curse traffic, grow irritated when plans change, or people make us wait. I used to be that way. Every minor inconvenience was a spark, and I carried around dry kindling in my chest, ready to ignite. But discomfort, I've come to understand, is not the enemy. It's a forge. It reveals who we are when no one is watching. And Stoicism helped me approach it not just with tolerance, but with grace. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That's what I've learned to do. Revoke the estimate. Re-evaluate the moment. Let go of the story that discomfort is injustice. Take that 2-hour wait at the airport again. Tired, hungry, no place to sit, my ride delayed. Once upon a time I would have paced in agitation, checked my phone obsessively, sent a flurry of texts, complained to myself, maybe even out loud. But this time I just stood. My feet were sore, yes. My body needed rest, yes. But I had earbuds, I had music, I had a sky above me, a breeze on my face, I had presence. And I thought to myself, if this is the hardest thing I face today, I'm doing okay, because discomfort is temporary. But how I meet it, that's eternal. That becomes part of who I am. So instead of resisting it, I welcomed it. I leaned in. I treated that wait as an invitation to practice. Patience, presence, peace. It wasn't the moment I wanted, but it was the moment I got. And Stoicism teaches that if you can love the moments you didn't choose, you'll never be a prisoner to your circumstances again. I've started seeing all delays that way. Waiting in line, an opportunity to observe your breath, sitting in traffic, a chance to listen to an audiobook or just enjoy silence, someone speaking too slowly. A moment to practice listening fully without rushing to respond. These moments don't take your time. They are your time. And we lose them when we treat them as obstacles instead of experiences. I think of Epictetus, who lived most of his life with a crippled leg, and in slavery, and yet spoke of inner freedom more eloquently than almost anyone in history. If anyone had reason to curse discomfort, it was him. But instead he said difficulties are things that show a person what they are. That line became a mantra for me. I started asking, what is this moment revealing about me? If I'm irritated by someone being late, what does that show? Maybe it shows impatience, maybe it shows control, maybe it shows ego, expecting the world to move according to my schedule. That's not who I want to be. I want to be someone who carries calm into chaos. Someone who doesn't flinch at inconvenience. Someone who makes people feel safer simply by being steady. And that starts in the small things. Because grace isn't tested in grand moments. It's tested in the quiet ones. The cold coffee, the broken Wi-Fi, the long customer service call. These are the moments that build character or reveal the lack of it. And I've failed plenty. I still do sometimes, but now I see it. And when I see it, I can adjust. That's the difference Stoicism makes, not perfection, but awareness. And from awareness, improvement. One day I watched a young man at a cafe lose his temper when the barista got his order wrong. Slammed his drink down, muttered curses, stormed out. And I thought, how fragile must your peace be if a mislabeled coffee can destroy it? I used to be that man, maybe not as visibly, but internally. And now I'd rather be at peace with a cold coffee than furious with a perfect one, because peace tastes better. The discomforts of life haven't stopped. Flights still get delayed. Phones still die at inconvenient times. People still disappoint. But I've stopped expecting smoothness. I've stopped believing that ease is the goal. Growth is the goal. Grace is the goal. Clarity is the goal. And every inconvenience is a training ground. I sometimes imagine myself years from now looking back at this season. Will I be proud of how I handled life's small disruptions, or will I see someone flailing through frustration? That question grounds me. So now when I feel tension rising, I pause. I take one breath. I remember that no one owes me efficiency, that the world isn't misaligned just because it's not comfortable, that discomfort isn't a sign something's wrong, it's a chance to show something's right within me. And when I meet those moments with grace, when I let them soften instead of harden me, I realize something else too. That calm is a skill, a posture, a discipline, and like any skill, it must be practiced. Every delay is a chance, every discomfort a doorway. And I walk through them now, not with resistance, but with open hands. Money used to have a grip on me. Not in the obvious ways, not through extravagant spending or some addiction to luxury. I was never chasing sports cars or designer clothes. But deep down, I equated money with safety, with control, with dignity. And when that safety was gone, I felt like I was falling, like life had yanked the floor from beneath me. I remember the exact day checking my bank account and seeing 19 naaldozes. Baas was ik heel wonde ik kan behalch. Just enough to haunt me. Not enough to access. The ATM limit was $20. I couldn't even take it out. That tiny cold number stared at me like a verdict. I felt shame, panic, like the world had no space for me anymore. That was the moment I realized I had let money define my sense of worth. Stoicism didn't cure my financial situation, but it did offer something far more powerful perspective. Seneca once wrote, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." That line broke through a mental wall. It challenged the entire framework I had been operating under. I didn't need more money. I needed less fear, fewer expectations, a better relationship with the idea of enough. Because money, like fire, is a wonderful servant but a terrible master. When I began rebuilding my life, starting a small business, watching it grow inch by inch, I made a decision I wouldn't let money rule me again. I would earn it, use it, respect it, but I would never worship it. The turning point came during my recent trip. A string of unexpected expenses hit: transport, food, lodging. All small things, but they added up. Old me would have spiraled. There goes the budget. What if this keeps happening? What if I run out? But I didn't spiral. I shrugged and said out loud, "It's only money." And I meant it. Not in a careless way. I still manage my finances. I still track and budget. But I no longer fear money. I no longer assign it emotional weight. Because I remembered something deeper. I had lived through worse. I had sat in a room with $19 in my account and no job. And I survived. Not just survived, I grew. That perspective is priceless. Now, I ask myself regularly, is this purchase adding value or noise? Am I using money to build freedom or to mask fear? Would I still be at peace without this? Those questions recalibrate me. Stoicism teaches indifference to externals, not because externals are meaningless, but because they're not the source of meaning. Money is external. It can help you, it can serve you, but it can't center you. It can't define you. It doesn't care about your virtue, your courage, your ability to stay calm in chaos. And when I truly internalized that, I felt a shift. I stopped comparing. I stopped measuring my success against income brackets or net worth charts. I stopped chasing numbers and started living in values. What I value now is autonomy, simplicity, integrity, time. Money helps facilitate those things, but it doesn't replace them. There was a moment not long ago when I stood in the grocery store checkout line. A family ahead of me was carefully counting coupons, checking totals, returning one or two items to stay within budget. I stood behind them, holding a basket of what I needed, and I realized I'm okay. Not rich, not flashy, but okay. I can buy what I need. I can cover a few surprises. I'm not paralyzed by the sound of a price beep. And that, after everything I've lived through, is wealth. Not the kind you flaunt, the kind you feel. Peace of mind. confidence in enough, freedom from fear. There are still days when I feel a twinge when I see someone else's success, when the numbers dip, when a big expense looms on the horizon. But now, I respond with curiosity or not panic. I remind myself money is not the measure of my life. Character is. I think about Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire and yet wrote constantly about humility, simplicity, and death. He had everything and knew it meant nothing without virtue. He reminds me that money can buy comfort but not courage. It can create options but not inner peace that must be built from within. So I hold my finances lightly now. I make good choices. I save, I invest, I spend mindfully. But I don't let numbers tell me who I am. I don't let my mood be dictated by decimal points. And when setbacks come, and they always do, I meet them with calm. Because I know I've been poor, I've been broke, I've been afraid, and I've still made it here. The man I was at $19 is not less than the man I am today. He was learning, stripping things down, finding the truth underneath the fear. And this is that truth. Money is a tool, not a verdict, not a god, not a personality, not a substitute for a life well lived. A good tool serves you. A wise life knows the difference. So I keep that tool sharp. I use it when needed. I respect it, but I never kneel before it. Because the real treasure isn't in my wallet, it's in the kind of person I've become. There's something sacred about remembering where you came from. Not to dwell, not to self-pity, but to anchor. To remind yourself of the ground you walked when your shoes were worn, your stomach tight with anxiety, and your future fogged by fear. For me, that memory is 19th. That number is etched in me, not as a wound, but as a landmark. A place I visited once, a place I survived. A reminder that scarcity is not the end, but sometimes the beginning. It was a cold night. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed, phone in hand screen, glowing with the number $19,000, just beneath the withdrawal threshold, mocking in its smallness. I hadn't eaten a proper meal that day. I had no income, no interviews lined up, no backup plan, just silence and shame. A kind of shame that wraps around your throat and makes you question your worth. I thought, how did it come to this? But even in that moment, especially in that moment, I learned something Stoicism had been whispering all along. Your circumstances are not your character. Your bank balance is not your value. And the weight of your suffering does not cancel your potential. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Look well into thyself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if thou wilt always look." I started looking not at the problems, but at my response to them. Not at the lack, but at the space it created. Because when you have nothing, everything becomes visible. The distractions fall away. The false identities, job title, status, possessions get peeled off. And what's left? You, raw, honest, present. The 19 lines taught me more about resilience than any success ever has. It taught me that dignity isn't tied to comfort, that value doesn't require validation, that I could sit in the dark with nothing but my breath and still find peace if I chose to. And now, years later, as my small business sustains itself, as groceries land in my cart without a calculator in hand, I remember. I remember because I need to. Success without memory is dangerous. It breeds entitlement. Forgetting makes us soft, arrogant, detached. But memory keeps us rooted, grateful, humble. When I eat now, I taste more. When I rest deeper. When I hug someone, I hold them longer. Because I remember the days when I was hungry, restless, and alone. I remember what it felt like to stretch a can of beans across 2 meals. To sit in job interviews, praying they wouldn't ask about gaps in my resume. To dodge friends because I couldn't afford coffee. To feel invisible in a world that celebrates only the thriving. That memory sharpens me. It's why I don't complain when small things go wrong, why I'm calm when delays hit, why I don't flinch at minor discomforts. Because I've known real pressure, and now the air feels light. It's also why I treat people differently. When I see someone struggling, fumbling for change, wearing worn shoes, looking tired in the eyes, I don't judge. I see them. I was them. I still am in some way. Because hardship doesn't fully leave you, it humbles you, refines you, and walks with you. And I want to carry that presence forward. That's another teaching from the Stoics, to use every experience for the development of the soul. Not to curse the past, but to convert it, to extract strength from the suffering. I think of Seneca, who wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." That 90 hours was friction, those weeks of silence, fear, and scarcity that was my polishing. Now, when things go well, I smile, but I don't soar. I stay centered. I don't let success inflate me because I know how quickly the winds can shift. I know how fast things can change. That knowledge keeps me ready, not paranoid, just anchored. And when things go wrong, because they still do, I no longer say, "Why me?" I say, "I've been through worse. I can handle this too." That's the power of memory. It becomes your shield. It's why I never want to erase that chapter. Why I keep the mental image of that 19 doors close, not as trauma, as training. Because without that season, I wouldn't have discovered Stoicism, not in the way I did. I wouldn't have searched so desperately for something deeper. I wouldn't have learned that peace is internal, that dignity doesn't wear labels, that strength grows in silence. And I wouldn't be who I am now, someone who values simplicity, presence, calm. So yes, I remember when I had nothing, and I'm grateful for it, because that nothing cleared the way for everything I now hold dear. There is no peace in the future. I know that sounds strange, but hear me out, because I lived most of my life there. In the future, in the what ifs, the someday soons, the when I haves. Always one step ahead of the present moment, chasing something that never quite arrived. The future was my escape, my mirage, my anxiety engine. Until I finally realized what the Stoics had been saying all along: the present is the only time that truly belongs to us. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly: do not waste what remains of your life in speculating about your neighbors, unless with a view to some mutual benefit. Be content to occupy yourself with the present. The present, not tomorrow, not next week, not after you hit your goals. This moment now is all we ever have. That realization didn't hit me all at once. It came in small waves. Like when I noticed how my mind wandered during conversations, half listening while crafting to-do lists. Or when I found myself scrolling through vacation packages while I was supposed to be enjoying lunch. I was always somewhere else, planning, projecting, escaping. But I wasn't living. So I started to practice presence not as an abstract idea, but as a skill, like learning a language. It began with intention, single tasking, breathing slowly, listening fully. It was awkward at first. My mind rebelled. It had grown used to multitasking, worrying, escaping. But gradually the noise faded. I started hugging people tighter. I noticed the warmth of sunlight on my arm, the texture of my fork in hand, the way music hits your chest when you're not distracted, the quiet joy of doing one thing fully. And the more I stayed in the present, the less I feared the future. Because when you're fully here, you realize you can handle what's in front of you. One breath at a time, one choice at a time, and you stop rehearsing tragedy before it arrives. Stoicism gave me permission to be here, not in some imagined ideal, not on the timeline of society. Just here, in the breath, in the body, in the now. And you know what happened. Food started tasting better. Music sounded richer. My wife's laugh, it hit differently. Not because the world changed. I did. I showed up. I noticed. We live in an age that constantly pulls us away from the moment. Notifications, deadlines, dopamine loops. Everything screams for our attention. But the present, it whispers. And we miss it until something wakes us up. For me, it was loss, struggle, emptiness. The realization that I had spent so much time chasing what's next that I had missed what is. Now I remind myself daily, this could be the last time I do this. The last breakfast, the last sunset, the last walk around the block. Not out of morbidity, but out of reverence, out of love for the ordinary. Because the ordinary is extraordinary when you actually see it. I started treating each interaction as if it might be my last with that person. Not dramatically, but intentionally. I speak a little softer. I listen a little deeper. I let my hand linger on someone's back when I say goodbye, because there are no guarantees. And that fact that truth is not depressing, it's clarifying. It makes every moment matter. That's what the Stoics meant when they talked about memento mori, remembering death not to fear it, but to feel life more vividly. To stop sleepwalking through your days. So now when I catch myself drifting into the future, when I start wondering what will happen next week or next year, I pause, I breathe, I look at where I am, at what's in my hands, and I ask, can I be with this fully? Sometimes it's joy, sometimes it's pain, sometimes it's just a mundane task, but it's real, and it deserves my full presence. Because the future, for all its mystery, has never once shown up on time, or in the shape I imagined. It has always arrived through the doorway of the present. So I tend to that doorway. I sweep its steps. I open it wide. I welcome what comes through with grace. There's an ease that lives here, a softness, a clarity. When I'm truly present, I don't need to hope things will be okay. I know they already are. And when I hug my loved ones now, I don't rush it. I don't treat it like a checkbox. I hold on because I understand this moment, this embrace might never return. And that doesn't make it scary. It makes it sacred. Patience used to feel like passivity. To me, it meant waiting, tolerating, enduring. It felt weak, like doing nothing while the world moved ahead. But I see it differently now. Patience, I've learned, is not the absence of action, it's the mastery of timing. The strength to hold still when everything in you wants to rush forward. The wisdom to pause when your ego screams to react. It's one of the most underestimated forms of power. And I didn't understand that until life gave me no choice. When I lost my job, when my bank account was nearly empty, when health uncertainties hovered like a fog, there were weeks where all I could do was wait. Not lazily, not helplessly, but with quiet discipline. I applied for jobs, built the framework of a business, rested when I needed to. But nothing moved quickly. The world didn't bend to my urgency, so I had to meet it with patience. And what Stoicism reminded me is that patience is practice, it's a muscle. Seneca wrote, "No great thing is created suddenly. There must be time. Give your best and be patient." Those words help me see that rushing leads to ruin, that trying to force solutions too soon can do more harm than good. So I started choosing patience not as a reaction, but as a posture. I practiced it in conversation, letting others finish before formulating my reply. I practiced it in my goals, reminding myself that slow growth is more stable than sudden success. And I practiced it in discomfort, sitting with unease instead of running from it. It wasn't easy. My mind is wired for speed. I used to see every delay as a problem to solve, every quiet moment as wasted time. But the more I lived with stillness, the more I realized patience isn't waiting for the storm to pass. It's learning how to stand in the rain. It's not about sitting still forever. It's about not flinching before it's time to act. One of the most transformative moments for me was during a client negotiation In the early days of my business, the deal was almost finalized, but they hesitated. Days passed, and then a week. I felt the urge to follow up repeatedly, to push, to show anxiety in the form of activity. But I paused. I remembered Marcus Aurelius. If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. So I sat with the uncertainty, didn't force it, didn't obsess, and the deal came through, stronger than expected. That was the moment I knew there's strength in restraint, in letting things unfold, in resisting the reflex to control everything. And beyond business patience, it changed how I moved through everyday life. Waiting in line at the grocery store, I used to sigh, shift my weight, check my phone 10 times. Now I take that time to observe, breathe, notice the person in front of me, maybe offer a kind word to the cashier. Stuck in traffic, I used to grip the steering wheel tighter, mutter frustrations. Now, I take it as time to reflect, listen to something enriching, or just sit in silence. Even with people, I've become more patient with those I love, especially when they're late, especially when they make mistakes, because I've learned we all move at different speeds. We all carry invisible weights, and impatience only adds more weight to both sides. So I've stopped demanding speed from life. I've stopped believing that fast equals better. I'd rather move slowly with depth than quickly with chaos. That's not laziness, that's clarity. It's knowing that the most important things in life, healing, trust, understanding, mastery, they all take time. Even when I was rebuilding financially, I stopped fixating on milestones. I focused instead on process, habits, intentions. I watched my income grow slowly, and I didn't panic when it plateaued, because I trusted my direction. I trusted me. That's another thing patience gives you: trust. The ability to wait, to hold steady, to keep showing up, even when results don't appear right away, that builds something unshakable. It's easy to be confident when everything is moving fast, but true confidence is quiet. It doesn't need constant feedback. It doesn't chase validation. It waits, it listens, it breathes, and now patience has become part of who I am. It's not perfect. I still get restless sometimes, but I catch myself faster. I choose calm. I delay reaction. I give things and people space to unfold. And in that space, life breathes more easily. There's a gentleness in patience, a softness that doesn't mean weakness, it means depth. It means choosing not to be disturbed by every ripple, choosing not to fight every wave, because the ocean doesn't need to prove itself. It simply moves. And I want to live like that, steady, deep, and patient. I used to live under the illusion that control meant safety. That if I could just plan enough, work hard enough, anticipate every problem, I could protect myself from life's chaos. Control was my armor, my shield, my way of staying ahead of uncertainty. But Stoicism taught me the hard truth: control is a myth, and chasing it doesn't bring peace, it brings exhaustion. There's a passage from Epictetus that says, "It best, some things are in our control and others not. Things in our control are opinion, pursuit, desire, aversion. Things not in our control are body, property, reputation, command." The first time I read that, I nodded like I understood. But it wasn't until life truly slipped from my grasp, when my health faltered, my job disappeared, and my future blurred, that the meaning hit me like a stone. Almost everything I worried about was never mine to command. I couldn't control outcomes. I couldn't force people to act the way I wanted. I couldn't make the markets behave. I couldn't stop time. I couldn't hold back loss. All I had really was this: my thoughts, my actions, my values, my presence. Everything else temporary, shifting, fragile. At first that realization felt terrifying, like I was floating without anchors. Like the world could toss me anywhere and I'd be helpless. But then something happened, I let go. not with defeat, but with acceptance. And that created a freedom I never knew existed. I stopped fighting what I couldn't change. I started focusing on the only thing I could, how I respond. And that shift changed my life. Take something as small as an argument. Before I'd obsess over the other person's tone, their words, their behavior. I'd replay it, try to fix it, try to force understanding. Now I ask, did I show up with clarity, with patience, with integrity? If yes, I let the rest go. Or look at my business. I used to fear slow weeks, panic at unexpected costs, get frustrated when results lacked. Now I show up, I do the work, I adapt, and I trust the process. Because peace doesn't come from controlling results, it comes from aligning with values. Even in relationships, this lesson has softened me. I used to want people to change, to heal faster, to be more like I needed them to be. But people grow in their own time. They see when they're ready, and trying to force that only creates resistance. So I stopped being the sculptor of other people's journeys. I became a mirror, a presence, a source of steadiness they could return to, not a hammer trying to shape them. That's freedom. The freedom to let others be who they are. The freedom to be who you are without apology. The freedom to release the false belief that the universe needs your permission to unfold. I started to realize the more I tried to control life, the more it controlled me. The more I clutched at certainty, the more anxious I became. The more I resisted the flow, the more battered I felt by every current. But when I surrendered, I didn't drown. I floated. There's a peace in that. In understanding that the river of life is moving with or without you. And your job is not to dam it, but to navigate it. With skill, with awareness, with grace. Now I live by a simple mantra. Control what you can, accept what you can't, and know the difference. Every day I wake up and ask myself, what is mine today? Usually the answer is clear. My breath, my discipline, my choices, my tone, the rest out of my hands. And I'm okay with that, because in giving up the need to control, I gained something bigger. Trust, not blind optimism, but reasoned trust. A belief that I can meet whatever comes, not because I control it, but because I can handle it. That kind of confidence doesn't depend on outcomes. It's internal, untouchable. I no longer chase certainty. I no longer need all the answers. I no longer fight the flow. And that has made me lighter, more patient, more joyful, more me. There's a moment that haunts me, not in a painful way, but as a quiet teacher. I was leaving a cafe years ago and waved goodbye to someone I cared about. Nothing dramatic, just a casual farewell. I assumed I'd see them again. We always think we will, but I didn't. Life shifted, circumstances changed, we lost touch, and that simple goodbye became the last moment I ever saw them. I think about that a lot. Not with regret, but with clarity. Because Stoicism reminds us of this unavoidable truth. Every encounter might be the last. Every conversation, every hug, every passing glance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could live life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That sounds grim to some people, but to me it's liberating. It makes the present sacred. It makes people sacred. Now, when I hug someone, I hold them just a second longer. When I speak to someone, I try to look them in the eye. I try to really see them not as part of my routine, not as a background actor in my life, but as a fragile living being who might be gone tomorrow, because we all might. And that awareness doesn't make me anxious anymore. It makes me more alive. I used to rush through conversations, distracted, multitasking, always thinking about what's next. But what's next is never guaranteed. All we ever have is this moment with this person. And once that landed in me, I couldn't go back. I began to treat each moment like a final scene. Not with drama, with presence. When my wife laughs now, I savor the sound like it's music I might never hear again. When my parents call, I pick up even if I'm busy. When a stranger smiles at me in passing, I smile back fully. Because life is short. But more importantly, life is fragile. The Stoics weren't obsessed with death. They were obsessed with using death to sharpen life, to strip away the illusion of permanence and focus on what matters. And what matters is now. You can spend a lifetime chasing tomorrow, but what a tragedy it would be to reach the end and realize you missed the only thing that was ever real this moment. So now I ask myself daily, if this were the last time I saw this person, would I be proud of how I treated them? Sometimes the answer stinks. I'm still human. I still get short, distracted, impatient, but I catch it sooner. I breathe deeper. I adjust. Because I want to leave people better. Not with grand gestures, with presence, even with strangers. A smile to a tired cashier. A moment of silence for someone grieving. A nod of acknowledgement to someone overlooked. These tiny acts, they matter. Maybe more than anything else we do. We think our legacy is built in milestones, careers, titles, achievements. But it's really built in moments, in the warmth we offer, in the space we create, in the way we show up when no one's watching. And if every moment is a final moment, then every moment deserves our full heart. That's what I live by now. Not as a performance, but as a principle. I imagine walking through life as if I were already a ghost. Watching the people I love, knowing I can no longer speak to them. How would I want to have spoken to them? How would I want to have treated them? Then I return to my body, and I act that way now. Because someday I will be gone, so will they. But between now and then, we have this incredible chance to live like it all matters. Because it does. When I see someone I care about, I tell them, I don't wait, I don't assume they know. I speak it, and I mean it. When I part ways with a friend, I take a breath and say goodbye, as if I'll never get the chance again. And strangely, that practice doesn't make life heavier. It makes it lighter. Because I no longer carry regrets. I no longer leave things unsaid. I live in such a way that if today is the end, I've done my part. And when it's not the end, when there's another day, I'm just as grateful. But I don't take it for granted. The sun rises, the phone rings, a hand brushes mine. All of it grace. All of it temporary. All of it enough. People often ask me now, how did you get so calm? It's not a compliment I'm used to. I used to be anxious, reactive, scattered. The kind of person whose mind raced 3 steps ahead of his body, who clenched his jaw without realizing, who couldn't sit still with uncertainty for more than a few seconds. Now my friends say I have this stillness like a river that moves but never splashes. But let me be clear, I didn't wake up one morning and find peace waiting for me. I practiced it every single day, and that I've come to believe is what the Stoics meant when they talked about philosophy as a way of life, not an abstract ideal, but a daily discipline, a choice, a posture. Peace is not a mood. It's not a lucky streak. It's not the absence of difficulty. Peace is the price of practice. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, you must build up your life action by action and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible, and no one can keep you from this. That's the heart of it. You don't become peaceful because the world stops testing you. You become peaceful because you stop giving the world permission to shake you. And that comes from repetition. From the small things, I practiced peace when I was broke, when I couldn't withdraw my last $19 from the ATM. I didn't panic, I sat with it. I practiced peace in long airport waits, standing for hours with aching legs, music in my ears, not resenting the delay. I practiced it when the business had a slow month, when I didn't know if a client would sign, when I saw bills stacking up like dominoes and simply said, we'll deal with them, one by one. Peace isn't passive. It's not zoning out. It's not pretending life is always okay. It's looking life in the eye and saying, even if you get worse, I'll still meet you with grace. That's what Stoicism taught me, And not just through reading, through doing, because the texts are just seeds. The practice is the soil. I made habits out of the philosophy, morning journaling, breathing, now watching my judgments, returning to the question, is this in my control? And when the answer was no, I let go. Not always perfectly, but more and more consistently. And that's the other part. Peace isn't perfection, it's persistence. The willingness to begin again, to return to the principles, to forgive yourself when you falter and keep going anyway. Some days I lose my calm. I snap, I worry. I feel old reflexes stir, but now I recognize them sooner. I return faster, and each time I learn. Peace is not something you achieve once and keep forever. It's something you cultivate every day. And the beautiful part is it grows over time. At first it was minutes, then hours, then days. Now it's just the water I swim in, not because my life is easy, but because my mind is trained. People think peace is a reward for the lucky. I believe it's the discipline of the wise, and the door is open to anyone. Start with your breath, then your words, then your choice. Watch what disturbs you, ask yourself why. Return to the present, respond instead of reacting, let go of what you can't hold. Bit by bit you'll feel it. A softening, a strengthening, a steadiness. That's the kind of peace no one can take from you. Not the economy, not an illness, not even death, because it's yours. Grown from within, now I walk slower. I listen longer. I love harder. I let life surprise me without demanding it entertain me. I wake up not chasing some big dream. I wake up simply grateful that I woke up. And I go to bed knowing that whatever happened today, good, bad, mundane, I met it with presence. That's enough. That's more than enough. That's peace. And if there's one thing I hope for you, it's not fame, fortune, or comfort. It's this quiet clarity, this earned stillness, this practiced freedom. Because everything else, titles, possessions, praise, is fleeting. But the person you become by practicing peace, that person endures.